suppose the frightening thing in a way of having your boundaries pushed all the time is, where do you end up? And some of us, a lot of people want to please others. So that's one thing that happens. And then we feel that we can't stand up for ourselves, or that I'll just do this one more thing. It's just 2 minutes, or it's just dropping somebody here, or it's just doing that. But then at some point, there's probably going to be some sort of explosion or implosion. And I think the thing that helped me set boundaries was I got to the stage where my boundaries were just pulled in too many directions, that everything became chaotic. And not to the external world, because nobody would ever have known, but certainly internally, I got to a stage where I just probably wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't, and it had built up slowly over time. But if you're not sleeping enough, and you're working too many hours, and you're not saying no enough, and I think for me, it was more about, there was so much work to do and so little resources that I never felt I could get help. And it wasn't that I couldn't ask for it. I just felt there wasn't the resources to bring help in. But then what happens is, one day you can't get out of bed. And I always think there's a great leveler in spending a day or two in bed and realizing that actually, oh, do you know what? The world went on without me. It really did. It's still here.
Anybody notice?
People managed to get things done. And in my case, like, I actually, it was burnout, but it was before we ever talked about burnout. It was back in 2005. I don't think anyone was talking about it then, and I didn't know what it was. And one day I started crying and I couldn't stop. I heard somebody say something that just, and it wasn't at me, it was, I was at a talk, and somebody mentioned something about stress, and it just realized to me that that's what was going on in my life. And so I took time off work. I was between contracts, so I just kind of, extended the time. It took me a very long time to recover. But one of the things that it did for me was, anytime a boundary started to get pushed, I noticed. Because it was like my body had now got an alarm system inbuilt that said no. And sometimes I would surprise myself. But it also took me years to talk about that experience, because I was lost somewhere in this chaos. But I can remember then, the next job I had, or one after that maybe, and having a BlackBerry given to me. And I was like, that's fine, but, don't expect me to use this outside of working hours, on holidays, whatever. I'll be traveling a lot with work, so it's brilliant to have it. Yeah. And somebody said to me, well, if you're not using it, then it means you're not committed. Yes. So I said, would you like to say that again? No, I didn't, but I just kind of like had a conversation where, please, this has got nothing to do with my commitment to the job. I am so committed to this job that I'm telling you, if I don't break after work and at weekends and on my holidays, I am not going to be able to give myself fully to this job. And it worked. And of course, the thing about anything is, once you do it once or twice and you realize people respect it, then you can keep going. And in my last job, I would go on holidays for 2 weeks, and I would put an out of office auto reply on. And I would say, if anything really urgent happens, call me. But I would never hear from anyone in the 2 weeks. Now, there'd be a queue outside the door when I came back, but people really respected that, and they knew where they stood. And that's the beauty of a boundary. If it's clear, people respect it, they understand it. They may grumble, but they kind of go, okay, that's clear. I'll see you when you get back. And then it means I went on holidays fully for 2 weeks and came back fresh.
That's perfect, because that we said earlier, with that part where you were saying, you were told if you don't look at it, you're not committed. And it's the like I say, the absolute flip of that, isn't it? It's actually by looking after myself, I'm ensuring that I can bring the very best of me, because that's how committed I am. Because getting yourself exhausted, and especially in that third sector where resources are so scarce and the problem you're trying to solve is bigger than, you're never ever going to be able to solve it by yourself, or even in your team, no matter what happens. You have got to be able to step back emotionally. And I think that's part of the challenge sometimes, is that we get so tied into what it is that we're doing and what we're trying to deliver, that we can't separate ourselves from the result we're trying to achieve. And I know I've been guilty of that in the past, and getting way too emotionally attached to things.
And it's very easily done. And it's not a criticism. There's nothing wrong that happens. It's just for your own long-term sustainability. Because I think when we talk about sustainability, it shouldn't just be about the planet, it should be about ourselves. For your long-term sustainability, work in a way that suits you, that you can still collaborate and meet your goals and everything, but make sure it suits you.
Because when you're at your best, those goals get achieved faster and more efficiently and to a better standard. And it's all I can think of at the moment. I think the phrase that keeps going through my head is that bit that you get told when you get on an aeroplane. Do you remember aeroplanes? Do you remember this? And you get on and they say to you, in the event of an emergency, put your own mask on first. And that's been being said on aeroplanes for 50, 60, I don't know, 120 years, I don't know. And yet it hasn't ever resonated in a different context. And that part of setting those boundaries and having the internal confidence and self-belief that by setting these boundaries, I am bringing the very best of me to everything that I do, and being able to say to someone, saying no for a start,